In 2010, Congress passed a controversial healthcare law, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, popularly known as ObamaCare, or otherwise known as the ACA. Shortly afterward, multiple parties, including business organizations, individuals, and 26 states, filed suit in district courts across the country to challenge the act's constitutionality. The results were fractured. Some courts upheld some or all of the ACA, others declared part or all unconstitutional. Some concluded offending provisions could be severed, and others argued that the act couldn't be challenged until someone was forced to pay the penalty. In National Federation of Independent Business versus Sebelius, the National Federation of Independent Business, the state of Florida, and other plaintiffs sued in Florida federal court Katherine Sebelius, the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The ACA is a massive piece of legislation, but the litigation challenged two key provisions. One, the individual mandate, which requires individuals to purchase health insurance or pay a penalty, and two, the Medicaid expansion provision, which conditioned continued receipt of federal Medicaid funds on states expanding their eligibility requirements for the program. The district court held that Congress had exceeded its authority in passing the individual mandate. The court concluded that the individual mandate was not severable and struck down the act as a whole. On appeal, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed that the individual mandate was unconstitutional. However, the Court of Appeals determined that the individual mandate was severable, so the rest of the act remained intact. The Supreme Court agreed to hear the case to resolve the split between the circuits. Chief Justice Roberts, writing for a divided majority, found the act constitutional in part and unconstitutional in part. Roberts first concluded that the individual mandate could not be justified as a valid exercise of commerce power because the Commerce Clause did not empower Congress to compel individuals to engage in commercial activity. Further, Roberts concluded that the possibility that people would participate in the healthcare market at some point in the future was not enough. Roberts viewed this as a slippery slope that would open the door to congressional regulation of all sorts of activity or inactivity not contemplated by the framers. To illustrate this, Roberts said that obesity was more responsible for increased healthcare costs than uninsured people, but under the government's theory, the federal government could mandate that people buy vegetables. Next, Roberts wrote that the necessary and proper clause only gave Congress the power to do things that were incidental to the valid exercise of some enumerated power. And therefore, the individual mandate could not be justified on this ground either. However, Roberts reasoned the individual mandate's penalty provision operated more like a tax imposed on those opting against purchasing coverage. Because the tax was assessed just like other taxes based on income and collected by the IRS, the fact that Congress had called it a penalty was irrelevant. The court interprets legislation as constitutional if fairly possible, and the individual mandate could be saved by interpreting the penalty provision as a tax. With respect to the Medicaid extension, Roberts held that the federal government could not withhold existing Medicaid funding from states that chose not to participate. Roberts acknowledged that Congress could offer grants to states and condition the funds on compliance with certain requirements, as happens frequently with highway and infrastructure funding. However, Roberts found that the act did not offer the states a genuine choice, because they must accept a basic change in the nature of Medicaid, or risk the loss of all Medicaid funding. Accordingly, the Medicaid provision was found unconstitutional. The majority found the provision severable from the remainder of the act, which was left intact. Justice Ginsburg concurred in part and dissented in part, concluding that the individual mandate should be upheld under the Commerce Clause because there was a rational basis for Congress to believe that the large uninsured population substantially affected interstate commerce, and that the mandate bore a reasonable connection to addressing that problem. Ginsburg disagreed that the Medicaid expansion was unconstitutional. Ginsburg found that the states had no existing rights to federal funds, and that Congress could decide whether federal funds should be given to the states and under what conditions. Justice Scalia dissented, writing that the entire act should be struck down as unconstitutional. He argued that neither the Commerce Clause nor the power to tax and spend granted Congress the authority to require the individual mandate. Scalia further argued that the Act's threats to terminate states' Medicaid funding absent compliance with the Medicaid expansion were impermissibly coercive. The Sebelius decision, particularly the portion of the opinion upholding the ACA's individual mandate, was hugely important in terms of federalism and national policy, and also highly controversial. If you found this video helpful, you can explore all of our content by visiting us at Quimbee.com. If you have a question or comment about this case, please post it in the comments area below, and we'll do our best to get back to you. If you think we did a good job with this video, please like, share, and favorite it. And if you think this video might be helpful to people you know, please share on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Google+ as well, to get this video out there. If you haven't done so already and you enjoy watching videos on this channel, click on the red subscribe button just below this video so you can get all the latest updates.